Vanguard Zombies is going to have a very complicated legacy. Up until recently, I think we all could have agreed that it was an open and shut case of the game being an overall disappointment. It's definitely the most polarizing Call of Duty game in a very long time, and I don't think there's very many Vanguard fanboys out there sitting around going, "Oh my god, Vanguarded, yes!" No one was waking up at 3 AM to play Terramail Dickass or Dare Unfun, but with the release of Shin Onuma Reborn recently, Vanguard's first round-based experience on zombies, there's actually a case to be made that Vanguard isn't entirely bad. Before we get into this though, if you enjoy these long-form videos, then leave a like and consider subscribing. Also tell me, what do you think of Shin Onuma Reborn if you've actually played it yet? Anyway, so let's start at the beginning. When Vanguard Zombies first released, admittedly I was the conductor of the hype train. Treyarch had just come off the back of Cold War being a severely underrated game that ended on a high point with Forsaken. The reveal teasers on social media looked fantastic, with them only working on zombies, and the competitive ranked mode for multiplayer, this actually looked like a slam dunk success. Until the game launched. This is where everything started to go wrong, in the words of Dr. Monty. What we were given on launch for Vanguard was such a departure from anything that Zombies had ever been that it felt jarring, but not in a really good way to the community. I remember waking up on Vanguard launch day and most people being generally excited for the game. Then release hour hits, and as usual everyone goes a little quiet for a bit just to gather their initial thoughts and just get a little bit of playtime in. That right there was the metaphorical calm before the storm, because once everyone realized there was no pause button on solo, only a few rotating objectives, and no main quest Easter egg, it became an absolute bloodbath on social media. We did in all fairness know that there wasn't going to be a main quest, but it does still hurt nonetheless when sitting down to play the game for the first time, because most people do want to try out the Easter egg on their first couple of days. There wasn't even a wonder weapon either, and no ray gun, which really just felt wrong for Zombies. There's never been a game without the ray gun before. Thread after thread after thread was just bashing what Treyarch had created. YouTubers were salty as fuck because they couldn't make 600 guides in 5 hours to get views, and Reddit was in full-on nuclear meltdown mode. This right here was probably the worst case scenario for Zombies as a game mode, coming off the back of a controversial but still insanely successful year of Cold War Zombies. Many people were crying that Treyarch had betrayed them and lost their trust at times, and it honestly felt a little bit hard to disagree with. Treyarch was getting shelled from all corners of the internet, and it didn't help that Vanguard itself just wasn't a very good game aside from just the zombies mode. The multiplayer was underwhelming, the campaign wasn't very good, and overall it was really impossible to justify a $60 price point for what felt like a bland and boring out-of-touch World War II shooter for the literal millionth time, and probably what, the 10th time the Call of Duty series alone has done. When sitting down to play a Call of Duty Zombies game, most people would think about something like Kino der Toten, classic round-based zombies where after a decade we know the script and how to really get things done. Even Outbreak had rounds despite it being a more open world experience that we had never really had before. And Outbreak had launched with round-based zombies maps, so it wasn't like that was your only way to experience Cold War Zombies at the time. But with Der Anfang, what the fuck happened? When people loaded up Der Anfang for the first time and they had to choose between objectives, then that's it. There was no real map exploration or a sense of wonder in what's to come next, so that felt very jarring. The player felt very enclosed and like Zombies creatively was getting shoved inside of a box that it was never really meant to be in. To me and a lot of other people, Zombies is just an idea and round-based is a form in order to execute Treyarch's creativity. But in this way, it really felt like Zombies had just been almost betrayed, and that it had lost its way in a sea of just good maps that had come before it, and now all of a sudden it really felt like Treyarch themselves was just lost and didn't know what to do sometimes. That's definitely not the truth, but that's the way that the community and a lot of players really felt like at the time. Even when entering the objective areas, every single one of them were minimally changed multiplayer maps that had nothing special about them. Let's also keep in mind that at least 4 different objective rounds were located inside the main hub area of Der Anfang, without also forgetting that the main hub area itself is also a reused multiplayer area, so there wasn't really anything screaming new and exciting at us in that regard either. And just to clarify, I want to be very clear about this, I'm not against multiplayer maps in Zombies, but I do appreciate when the differences are more than just adding a few spikes and some blood spatterings around the map. Zombies has been using multiplayer maps literally since the beginning with Nocturne on Toten, but you can usually tell the difference and they feel a little bit different than just a multiplayer map, but Daronfang felt like multiplayer. I'm also not even going to touch on the camo grind and the Covenant system because I honestly never grinded the camos, and with the Covenants I found out which ones were the meta right away, used the Einhorn shotgun which one hit kills forever, and I got to round 189 before uninstalling the game for 6 months. And I feel like that makes me somewhat unqualified to talk about the variety of them, but overall I don't think that the Covenant system is entirely flawed like some people do. It's okay, but I think that it's a little bit much for some players. After the dust settled from launch though, the zombies community entered a funk that I don't think it's still really fully recovered from. Sure, Vanguard was being updated, but most of those updates were adding a random objective to the game or fixing some bugs, and nothing really substantial was happening. But eventually in January, we received a ray of hope when a new objective was added to Daronfang called Void, where it was the Wish.com version of round-based zombies. The way it worked was that you need to play Daronfang regularly until unlocking a Void portal where you could enter and it would take you over to Shi no Numa. From there, you would play round-based zombies, but only in the main hut area, which was admittedly very small. There's no traps to use, only one door to open, no perks, no wall buys, nothing. And it also didn't help that Ring of Fire at launch was very broken, so my fiance literally reached round 298 in the first day by sitting in a corner. But despite that, it was a step in the right direction for the game, and it felt like Treyarch was trying to meet us halfway on what we were asking for at the time. Then a month after that came along Terra Maledicta, which there's no way really to describe it other than underwhelming in pretty much every way. First off, all of Daronfang's issues are still present here, but new things were tried and were introduced. We finally got the ray gun, and it was fine, even if it was weaker than the Cold War version that the community had become accustomed to. The Zavala mini-boss was added, and that thing fucking sucked from what I heard and played in my one attempt before giving up on the map. Thankfully, it's been somewhat nerfed since then, but at the time it really made Maledicta a slog to play through. Another wonder weapon was also added called the Decimator, and it's basically useless. You're essentially carrying around a shield with meat wrapped around it, and it's kind of sassy, but that sass doesn't really result in any success. There's a charged ability that can kill zombies, but it has a 2-minute cooldown to use, so have fun with that, I guess. Maybe you can use that time to contemplate what life choices made you result in playing Terra Maledicta. This map also had our first main quest Easter egg in Vanguard Zombies, and guess what? It was kind of underwhelming again. Yeah, so probably 70% of the whole quest is just unlocking the Decimator shield. The rest of it is to complete slightly modified objectives like you normally would, and it ends with us grabbing a piece of paper. Our reward is some chests with a bit of loot in it, and that's it. No boss fight, no cutscene, and barely any storyline audio to help us figure out where we're headed to next. I'm also not even kidding when I say that this main quest was completed before the map even launched, because there's a glitch that only a few people know to force load maps on PC that aren't out yet. Those people finished the main quest like 10 hours before launch, which makes it the second fastest main quest completion ever behind the final Reich. Reich was completed close to a week before launch, but that was only because of early copies. So yeah, that's Terra Maledicta in a nutshell, and at this point Vanguard Zombies had hit absolute rock bottom. No one was wanting to play it, no one was hopeful, and honestly a large portion of the community actually wanted Treyarch just to abandon the project entirely and put everyone on their main project for 2024. It seemed like Vanguard wasn't going to get any better, and there really wasn't any reason for us or the developers to care about updating it at all. Luckily for us though, the developers do actually care. So after 6 months, which is roughly 2 months after Terra released, we finally got a pause button in solo zombies matches, which according to Treyarch was much harder to implement than we would ever give it credit for. They weren't the ones who designed Vanguard initially, and apparently Sledgehammer didn't have the infrastructure in place for pausing matches, so having solo matches on dedicated servers and being able to pause it was kind of a huge headache for them to implement. Nonetheless, it finally happened, and Treyarch went quiet again, or at least until June 14th when Treyarch tweeted an image for a Shi no Numa Reborn. That might not sound like much admittedly because this is the 4th time that we're seeing Shi no Numa, and it's already sort of been in Vanguard since launch, but I promise this is actually pretty significant. Why, you may ask? Well, because this isn't just Shinonuma. We were promised more areas to explore, a main quest Easter egg, a wonder weapon quest for the Wonderwaff, gameplay adjustments, and on top of that, the art looked fucking sick. All of Vanguard Zombies looks really good, but Shino looked great. Anyway, point being is that this was really looking to be an upswing for zombies. Everyone was rightfully cautious about it, and a lot of people didn't even want to give Vanguard Zombies another chance. But just when you think Treyarch has totally lost it, they always somehow pull out a good map from seemingly nowhere and make you believe again just enough to keep on wanting to play their maps. Anyone who's played Shinonuma already knows the map layout, but with this reimagining, a new area was added called the dig site, which is actually really cool and has a purpose aside from just being tacked on to say that it's there. The map itself feels nice and crisp, with you feeling right at home while also giving the player a little bit of reason to look around and try out new ways to play. High rounds aren't entirely a pushover, but are manageable because the Wonderwaff shreds through zombies and honestly feels super satisfying to use in your hands. Wall guns can also upgrade themselves every few rounds, meaning that if you've got the cash, then they've got the firepower, which is a nice touch to keep players from feeling entirely underpowered when trying out new weapons. Then we have the main quest Easter egg, which genuinely, honest to God, felt like a little bit of old Treyarch was back. You need to find some cipher wheels around the map and take them to a monolith in the doctor's quarters areas, and that needs to be broken open. Then we need to do a quest for the Wonderwaff, crack open the monolith, and place a cipher wheel on that monolith. After finding 3 Japanese kanji around the map, we use a cipher key in the doctor's quarters hut to decipher it and turn the cipher wheel to align it. Then we do a lockdown step where boss zombies spawn in, and so do zombies with a blue mist that need to be killed with the Wonderwaff. This is actually a difficult step that most people, including me, fail a few times before eventually getting it right. Once this is completed, you need to use the flogger trap to fling zombies at a broken perk fountain, which will fill up with blood so that we can drink it and enter zombie blood mode. This is actually a really creative step that we've never seen from Treyarch before, and I actually was really a big fan of it. Then we find a red orb that we need to escort while defending ourselves from a ton of exploding zombies that spawn in, and once the escort is done, a mirror piece spawns in. This all needs to be done in zombie blood mode as well, by the way. After that, zombie blood is needed again, where we follow a map to find another mirror piece which spawns randomly around the map. Next, you charge a blue orb by following it around and shooting it until it returns to the dig site, and now we can begin the boss fight. In this boss fight, we fight Syraxis, who we need to fight in 3 different stages. Each of those stages change what you need to do in order to fight Syraxis and actually deal damage to her. After she's defeated, we actually do get a cutscene, and while it is somewhat underwhelming in the fact that it's not fully animated, it's still something, and that's better than anything else Vanguard has given us so far. So overall, when this map actually released about a week ago, I would say 90% of people who played it really enjoyed it for what it was. The main consensus was that it felt like Treyarch had actually made zombies not just playable, but actually enjoyable in a round-based setting. There's all the bells and whistles most people would expect from maps, and it left a good impression with the community overall. On top of that, it was announced that there will be at least one more round-based map coming to Vanguard, which I think to most sensible people, they're actually going to get a little bit excited for. But what this does also mean is that it's going to leave Vanguard Zombies with a complicated legacy once this year is completed. For 8 months of its life cycle, the community couldn't say the word Vanguard without some people vomiting in their mouth, while others like me tried to find some positives but just found the gameplay boring rather than offensive. The problem now is, and it's a good problem to have, is that once Treyarch made traditional zombies again, it was actually good. Imagine if this game had launched with a round-based experience, how different the last 8 months would have been, and everyone could have seen it as a nice way to keep us occupied while we wait for Treyarch's next main game. But because we got those weird objective-based maps that flopped harder than Morbius, we now have a lot of bad mixed in with some good. Vanguard is not worth buying just for Shinonuma Reborn, despite it being quite fun, but if you do own it, then the map is good enough to warrant downloading it again. Maybe the next round-based map will make the purchase worth it, but only time will really tell on that one. Overall though, this feels like a story of what ifs and what could have been in a different timeline. We've had some of the lowest points in zombies history this year combined with some very late stage hope, and it just feels really weird because usually it's the other way around. Zombies tends to start off very hot with a launch map and then sort of cool off as it goes, with maybe DLC 2 or 3 being very underwhelming. My thoughts are all over the place with this, and it leaves me with a lot of mixed feelings that, as I said a minute ago, will hopefully swing one way or the other if the next round-based map is in fact really good. Treyarch really has a chance to actually have us believe again going into their next project, which if you had told me that a couple of weeks ago, I would have called you crazy. But what do all of you think about Vanguard Zombies, Shinonuma Reborn / Reimagined, and do you believe it's too little too late, or could this year genuinely turn around? Tell me in the comments, because usually I see opinions from hardcore fans on places like Twitter, but a lot of you are very casual players or people that haven't touched zombies in a few years, and it'll give me a unique insight on what this group of people is feeling. Also, a like and subscribe would be definitely appreciated if you made it this far into the video. Now go watch this video I uploaded yesterday about Dying Light 2, or another video in this style about Black Ops 2. They're both on the screen right now. Thanks for watching, bye.